I watched as the child opened the first of the 7 seals. There before me a great calamity of raw, unrelenting chaos. When the child opened the second seal, I heard the sound of distant thunder. 1,000 drum beats carried over 10,000 chords. When the child opened the third seal, I saw blinding light as hope and dread clashed at the end of time itself. When the child opened the fourth seal, I heard a voice speak to me from within. It said, "Come." I looked, and before me rode 4 storm riders. My time had come. For so long I've waited to be this close to a legend. A man who's lived 1,000 lives, from ancient Japan to the strange land quadrant. A man who has wreaked great chaos and saved countless souls from damnation. His foes are many, and his quest overwhelmingly challenging. Many a ballad have been written about his deeds, and these stories have been my life work, my life's dedication. I've heard every tale, devoured every bit of information I can, and today, it all comes together.
Hi everybody. I I thought long about this, whether I wanted to talk in this video or write the text of what I want to say, and I think for many reasons I won't be talking anymore in this video, at least, besides the intro and the interview that you'll be hearing up ahead. Life got in the way, basically. I'm just a lot tired and I don't feel like talking too much. I just want to say thank you to all of those that played the Legacy of the Beast. I want to say thank you to all the devs that put their time and effort into the game. I want to say thank you to the friends that I made while playing the game. The community of this 8-year-long mobile game is amazing and fantastic, and I really enjoyed talking to you. I'll let you enjoy this video, which should have probably posted sooner, but I think a part of me didn't want to finish this last project on Legacy, because after this I don't have anything more to work with for this game, and you know, tears are flowing. So yeah, enjoy and be grateful that it happened. Okay, so first of all, I would like to ask you uh, basically, who are you and what was your role into the developers team?
Yeah, so I was the content designer from February 2021 until August 2022 on Legacy of the Beast at Navigator Games. K Factor, you can. I went by Oblivion 8 on various LOTB servers.
Okay.
Hidden amongst the populace, I guess.
Yeah.
And basically from right after the release of Avalon as
Yeah.
sort of the big release that they did, and I left right before. I want to say it was right before the circus release with the skulls. Do you know what I'm saying? Know what I'm talking about?
I think I do. Yeah, yeah.
It was the oh fuck, what was the collab? It was a collab. It was a collaboration.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
God, I would open the game to watch and see which character would be, but I still
yeah,
recall.
you know the skulls, the NFT skulls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, yeah. So it was right before that release. Actually, the last content I did was the I think the thing at least that was burned in my memory. The last thing I worked on was the different world storyline with Genesis as a character, and I
yeah, Genesis
developed,
was the last one. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and so I developed the story and the characters around that release. So that came out actually after I left, but I had done the work prior. So.
Yeah, okay. What did you do into what was your job?
So as content designer, you know, it's a little interesting because I didn't come into the job thinking I was going to end up being kind of in charge of most of, if not all of the design elements of like the characters and story. I came in and when I first started at Navigator, I was helping out another content designer that was still on the project. Do that kind of post Avalon launch stuff, releasing like Dark Gunmaker Gabriel. And I started basically just kind of learning how to implement characters, how to design them, what the meta of the game was. I never fully wrapped my head around what the hell the meta of the game was. Mostly because it was by that point in time, me coming into the project, the game was so insanely complicated.
It was gone.
Yeah, it was more of in my opinion, it was more of a game about collecting your favorite characters.
Yeah, it became like that.
Yeah, and trying to use them in a fun, like trying to find ways to use them against especially when you're talking about arena players who are like the most hardcore guys. So I started helping out, try to figure out what the hell was going on. I'll be honest too, I wasn't a huge Iron Maiden fan. I didn't really listen to Iron Maiden when I got the job. And so part of my early onboarding was, you know,
to get
watching Iron Maiden documentaries, listening to the music, getting into it. And by the end of it, I would say like I'm an Iron Maiden fan. I like Iron Maiden as much as any other music I listen to. Yeah, like my 4 weeks would end up being my 4 weeks in each cycle for each release would end up being like designing the content. Basically, it was the first week, like actually like paper designing the content, where I'd like go through the characters that we want to make. We'd plan ahead. We'd plan months ahead for what characters we were planning to make, and I would go and take the characters that we had got approved already, been approved by both our management team at Navigator and also the management team for Iron Maiden, who would review all of the stuff that we would do. And so all those would be approved already. So I jump in and know what characters I'm making at that point, and that would be week 1. Week 2 would be implementation week, and that was the most hardcore week. That was the week that I dreaded every month, because that's the week I had to go into the game engine and actually I'm not a programmer, but I would take the tools that were given to me by the programmers and implement the characters. That's right. So that would be a hard week, because to be honest, I would shoot myself in the foot a little bit because part of what I find fun with designing characters and doing stuff in games like these, especially games that have a track record like LOTB did, is I like to try to like do creative things and like make interesting designs and and I hope if you look at the characters that came out between 2021 and 2022, you'll see that, like, as one example, Asmodeus. Yeah, his passive ability would rotate between different, I think, books.
Yeah, it was books. Yeah.
And he had about 4 to 6 books, and he would rotate through each one every round, every turn. It was a completely novel concept.
Yeah, it was a fun.
There wasn't any characters like that. Well, to be honest, how many of the things I made ended up being powerful enough to like be in the arena and meta? It's hard to say. Probably very limited. Probably 5 to 15%, somewhere in there, right? But as far as like fun and creative character, it was my way of sort of giving something interesting to the community. And so Asmodeus was a character that would rotate through like 4 or 5 books, and then he had a servant, like a little demon servant at like I don't remember.
Attendant of Asmodeus.
Like Steward.
Steward.
Yeah. And I think it was Steward because people either internally in Navigator or either on the Discord server were calling him Stuart, like the name Stuart. But then the Stuart would introduce 2 new books that he could use.
Yep.
So if you played the Stuart with Asmodeus, you'd get like 6 books instead of 4.
Yeah, I love those fun combos.
That was a fucking nightmare. So it's like that really like those sorts. After I did Asmodeus, for example, it was like I'm never making a mechanic like this again. I'm not like it was not worth the time. It was a lot of work, and so that would be my second week of every month, and then the last 2 weeks of every month would be bug fixes, play testing, bug fixes. Because of the sort of rigor of going month to month with all these characters every month, I didn't get to play test as much as I'd like to have in terms of like actually trying the characters out.
Yep, I could see that.
Yeah, but because we had a smaller team at that point, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, it was kind of fun to sort of create within the LOTB space and characters and then release them out into the game was so crazy at that point that it really didn't matter what was released in the fact that if it was really powerful, it probably would be just as powerful as the crazy powerful stuff that was already out. And if it was really underpowered, it would just be a collector piece at that point, right?
So like, did you have any indications on how powerful it needed to be, or you just like were free to design whatever you wanted?
Yeah, so it kind of touches base on the same question about like the meta, right, and what was happening with the game. And like I said, I inherited the game in like the peak of power level, right, like the highest power level that there had been. So part of what I wanted to do in that year and a half was try and not fix the meta, because I didn't at that point. It was just in some ways it was unfixable in terms of we couldn't take characters away from people, obviously, and we couldn't easily change characters' kits within the time we had month to month. And so I would occasionally I could be misremembering, but from what I remember, there was a few times where we tweaked a few things to make things a little bit more balanced. But I tried to first just understand what the mechanics were of the game and see how those could be used to sort of shape the meta and change the balance. So one thing I think, if I'm not mistaken, was that instant death was sort of this mysterious mechanic, like that nobody really understood how like instant death worked, and it was sort of across multiple characters had it. It wasn't the text of all the characters weren't always. It wasn't consistent.
Yeah, it was not clear. I remember even explaining that to some of the players that were not getting it. So
because it was a special kind of permadeath, and permadeath was something that could be blocked because it was a status effect. Yeah. Instant death was kind of this special version of permadeath. And even internally in the game's code, it was sort of this untouchable thing that we couldn't, we didn't have programming resources to come in and fix it.
Okay.
And so, as an example of some stuff I did was, I think closer to when I left, or maybe in the last 6 months, I can't remember the timeline. I went through and sort of went through all the localization, all the text of the game, and sort of try to streamline the term instant death to be the keyword, basically. So it was at least consistent.
Yeah. And it became instant kill, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yes, that may have been the case. Yes. And so stuff like that. There was other instances where, because I was plugged into the Discord and saw some of the people playing Arena, I knew what was powerful, and I knew what people were using. And so part of the design philosophy I had was, instead of trying to like fix what was already sort of broken in some ways, or fix what was sort of overpowered, try to create strategies and things that would counter the most powerful things.
Yeah. You try to uplift the others to the level of
more like create like an anti-meta. You know? And so,
which is what I tried to do in the last period of gameplay, basically.
Yeah, like one example of that comes to mind was it was kind of in some ways it worked and in other ways it backfired, which was and I would argue maybe the most infamous thing that I designed was the Gemini talisman, which, as you probably know, was both a meta-breaking talisman and also a meta-defining talisman.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, also utilized that kind of instant death mechanic. Because at the time when I designed the Gemini talisman, and again, I'm trying to remember things from years ago, but the strategy, the meta was huge teams with like unbreakable sort of HP and defenses. Like teams that would just like you couldn't kill, like you couldn't do enough damage.
There was like the meta back then. I think it was sort of Champion of Avalon Eddie, which would come back every time even stronger, and then with Exalted effect would just dump all the damage you did to him back to you and would resurrect all the allies. There was Hymnos of the Los Muertos Eddie, which again also was like immortal being. And there was also I think
finish.
No, it's okay. I think there was also Coal Giver about that time.
Coal Giver, I think so.
That received the Awakening with the least, which was I think that was the last character that got nerfed. Like it was too powerful and got his skills tweaked down, which is something that in the game after that nerf, some characters needed and never got.
And it was an unfortunate thing. It was just about we needed to hit our content targets for every month, and so we didn't have that time slot to be able to go back and touch too much.
It was either new content or fix. Yeah,
exactly. And new content, unfortunately, is the thing that made our company money. So we had to do that. And we wanted to give new content to players as well to make sure that they were excited about every release. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the players were more interested in newer characters than they were in the balance at that point. But yeah, Gemini Talisman was an effort to put a stop to some of those strategies, because it would be, it would instant kill one of their people that wouldn't be able to be killed otherwise. And what happened was that it just became like the most powerful talisman, right? Like everybody ran Gemini. Everything was Gemini. And
reason why I love the Materazu.
Exactly. So that's a good thing, good point you bring up, because what I was going to say was that was an example of me trying to fix the meta or address the meta, and it sort of backfiring a little bit. But then the response to that is, okay, how do we combat Gemini? And so then I designed and created certain things that would either disable or turn off Gemini talismans. And I believe Amaterasu was one of those characters, right? And so, it was kind of this weird dance of like, what's strong? How can we make things that counter what's strong? So at least it gives people some sort of counterplay. And I don't know if I succeeded or not, but that was kind of the the effort, at least.
Like I would say for the most part, what I felt like the game where it was going. It was, yes, a collector game, and for the gameplay part, it was like something that get released, and maybe months later, after what we could see it performing, was like there was the countermeasure to that thing, which would
Yeah.
become even more powerful because everyone would be running those things that would get disabled, and now you couldn't play that thing, so you needed to play the new one,
Yeah.
and it's just like it ended up being like only a mirror match in arena where you flip the coin. If
Yeah.
you start first, you win. If you start second, you lose.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I again, I remember even in that instance trying to create things that could, because what happened was I think the meta turned into like what you just said, which was if you went first, you were able to pull off all this crazy combos your opponent
Yep.
wasn't able to set up, and you won. And so I vaguely remember trying to create certain things that were, you know, you couldn't just lose right away first turn. I think, for example, Amaterasu in particular was a character who had a rotating set of shields that would protect her from specific
Yeah.
kinds of damage. And so stuff like that was sort of a way to be like, okay, let's try to make the game feel more strategic, more tactical. But it's tough. It was a tough ask, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was fun. That was probably one of the more fun aspects of my job was trying to figure out what needed to be done to make the meta feel at least somewhat interesting, and then watch the people,
the community react. Yeah.
the community react to the releases. And on the other side of things, so there was that element of designing characters,
Yeah.
but then there was also the element of designing like, oh, what if we just did some like crazy, some crazy sort of like things, like I said, like Asmodeus, or even like one of my favorite characters of all time that I don't know how it got approved. I don't know how it got released. I don't know how it ever got the light of day. But my baby boy, Shy Herald, avatar of Eddie, my one and true dearest. I love that character so much. I don't know if you remember, you recall, or maybe people watching this recall, but we did a live stream event on one of the Discord channels, and we showed off a trailer that revealed Shy Herald. And the funny thing that people probably don't know is that I personally edited that video because I was just so passionate about the character that I took like 6 or 7 hours after work one day just to like put together this video. And that's why some of the gameplay, I didn't have like the proper like super renders. So if you go back and watch it, there's a little bit of scuffiness to some of the shots. But I will say now, I will say it here right now, just for you, exclusive breaking news is that all the voiceover for that video was me. So I did all the voices. I did I think I remember the worms, sounded like this, and I put it through a joint, and then Shy Herald himself was like, yeah, I think I did the Eddie scream for that video as well. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that was a lot of fun. But Shy Herald is an interesting case where I didn't think it would be meta, but I wanted to see if I could just create a really powerful character that did something different. Yeah, like what if we gave the level 1 sandworms Eddie's passives? So like if you play a team of sandworms, then you can, all of them in theory should have some powerful effects on them. I don't think it ever worked out, but that was kind of like the design philosophy. It was like, let's at least enable people to try the teams that they want to try, right?
I will just say two things. The first one is that the intro for that video will be also the intro for my video, so you give me permission to use it. So I just
it is.
put it. I edited out a little bit, but I used the intro. So
yeah, yours,
yeah.
go for it.
Thank you. And for the other part is that I think by that time when you already said that you came in when the game was already already gone balance wise. I think that time the problem with was not quite the sandworms getting the Eddie's passives. It was like that the sandworms damage basically was not enough to bring down the other characters, nor were their skills, because their skills were like the first characters that were designed in 2016.
100%. Yeah.
So, but it was a really fun attempt, and despite me not having the character for a long period of time, I I got that character, like, I think I got Shy Harold last year, which, I mean, is already too late, but I tried to make it work even in the dungeons, but it was already too late because you
Yeah.
couldn't. Or there was Cernunos already going a rampage, giving
Cernunos.
immunity to every.
I designed Cernunos too.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's okay because despite everything, Cernunos was like even it was weaker than Amaterasu because his passive would not protect him against Amaterasu's passive, which removed the block damage.
Right. Yep.
So
yeah.
if I ever had to fight a NAS team of Cernunos, I would just put my Cosmic Amaterasu into it and burn them to death. So
Yeah.
Amaterasu, I think, it was stronger.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. Well, I'm glad Amaterasu was impactful to the meta. That is
Yeah,
fun
yeah. I mean, to me, it was. I still used her even to the last days of the game. Like,
nice.
she was
That's
always
awesome.
there, and I even recorded some of them, and I even forgot how her passive of the Cosmic Amaterasu, that instant kill the enemies that had 10 or more burns. So I ended up having this team where they wouldn't die, but occasionally they would take the burn effects. So each time Amaterasu uses her basic ability, she would apply one burn more.
Yeah.
And I ended up after like 20 turns just blasting them off with attack, and it was really fun.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah. Which
Amaterasu.
I enjoyed. No, it's okay. I enjoyed playing like for longer times in a single match rather than having 2 turns being absolutely obliterated and just okay, that's it, I guess.
Yeah. Amaterasu's a cool character. We always memed on her, calling her Mama Tiramisu. Which you may have seen. But she was interesting because we were setting up for the Senjutsu release, sort of both in the game and the album. And Amaterasu was sort of a character I can't quite remember, but I do recall one of the former content designers sort of pitching the idea of us doing like gods like that, and it was a collaborative effort for sure. But I know we knew we wanted to do another raid boss, and it just kind of fit and made sense. And Amaterasu kind of turned into this character that at first it was just a raid boss idea, but then she sort of fit into the narrative and the lore more and became sort of a bigger part of the Legacy of the Beast narrative there. So yeah, I really like her. And I think I posted somewhere on one of the Discords, but even though it's not technically like 100% confirmed canon, in my head, at the end of the Stratego music video, Senjutsu Eddie, or not, was it Senjutsu Eddie?
Stratego Eddie. It was
Senjutsu Eddie. It was Senjutsu Eddie. He's playing Go, and all you see is a mysterious female hand putting a piece down. And in my head, it was always Amaterasu. So
yeah, I mean, it checks out.
Cool, so.
It checks out. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so design, like coming back to the idea of design again, I sort of looked at it from like 2 elements. You had the meta defining elements where I was trying to create stuff that would like break the meta, make the meta more interesting. So stuff like the Gemini Talisman, stuff like Amaterasu, even stuff like I remember, what was it called? There was one character we created about maybe 6 months before I left. It was oh god, I can't remember the name. It was like a bat. It was like a big bat thing.
Wasted
Love?
Was
it a bat thing? Yeah, Wasted Love. Yeah. So Wasted Love was an attempt to try to like create something powerful that would be desirable for players, but also sort of like meld into the meta. And I believe he ended up being quite annoying and potent as well.
Like from the player side, I would give it this. The problem with Wasted Love was that his passive would ignore the immunity to silence effects.
Yeah.
But at least it was for every team, like it's not just for the enemy. That was the cool part about it. Even though it was kind of unplayable against him because you would just shut down everything, you could still, know for a fact that neither you nor the enemy team could use his furies or power abilities.
Yeah.
And it was all fine until they introduced I think it was called the Dark Clown, Dark Jester,
Okay.
which basically did the same thing of Wasted Love, minus the drawback of your team getting the downside. So
I didn't
no, I
design
mean,
that.
yeah, no, because it was like last year that got implemented, but it was like, what? When it came out, I was like, why?
Yeah, fair.
I was,
I can't speak to the intent.
I was shocked because we already had something that was, even if was frustrating to go against, it was balanced because it would like even out the odds, and it would just ignore this. And
I can't speak to the intent of the design after I left, but you know, like I said, there's sometimes we would be like, okay, we want to create like a really desirable character. So like whether that was an Eddie, oftentimes they were Eddies. Eddies were kind of always desirable though, so that was never really an issue. But Eddies were sometimes, and then we'd be like, okay, let's create like a desirable minion that we could throw in the game and people would be like really driven to go after. And so I remember Wasted Love was one of those characters.
It was a cool character indeed. I
Yeah.
think could have helped a little tweak down maybe, but it was a nice
Sure.
It was a nice character, yeah.
Well, so that was kind of one element of the design was like these kind of like meta defining, meta breaking, meta interesting characters. There was a second group of characters that were just kind of like collector pieces. They weren't never going to be great. Not every character was going to be amazing. So we knew like some characters, stuff, especially stuff like the different flavors of angels and like knights and stuff, you know, that like were just kind of like reskins in a way, but sort of a way to like bluff it out for each class. So you'd have your sentinel one and your warrior one and your mage one. And then the third one was one that I came up with, or the third grouping was one I came up with that I think we kind of touched upon with Shy Herald a little bit, which was sort of this archetypal sort of character group, which I actually found inspiration, ironically, from Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't know if people know Yu-Gi-Oh! Much, but basically in Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very similar to LOTV in a weird way.
I played a lot
in
of
like
Yu-Gi-Oh!
One or two turns. It's just like games will end quickly, and they would have archetypes. They'd release like 12 cards that all share a keyword or a name, and those would be those meant for those decks.
Yeah, that would work all together.
Yeah, and so when I was developing Legacy of the Beast content, that was kind of where my mind was at with some of that, where, you know, we would see archetypes like Shy Herald and his worms. We would see archetypes like the angels and dark angels working well with some characters. Like they would all they would synergize with each other. So trying to incentivize players to build teams around specific groupings of characters. I think another one which was really cool was, if I'm not mistaken, like even Senjutsu Eddie was part of sort of this Bushido archetype, where you could play off with all the Bushido abilities, which was cool.
And also Senjutsu, it would grant the Bushido code to all allies that didn't have a Bushido, so you could also
customize it a little bit.
Yeah,
exactly. Fun, and I'm trying to remember what my favorite archetype. Actually, my favorite archetype, I think, without having to look back and remember all of them, was the Different World one. So Different World was an archetype that I came up with.
I really love them all. Yes.
Yeah, and similar to Asmodeus, it was one that after I did the first initial group of Different World, I was like, okay, I can't do more of these. They were just, because every time you added more Different World characters, you had to go back to the old Different World characters and make sure you added the new character to the list, because each one didn't want to. I think they didn't want to be paired with each other.
Yeah,
something like that.
The whole thing was that you never wanted to play them all together because they were less powerful. So my go-to was just going with Eddie, which was the strongest.
Different World Eddie, yeah.
Yeah, I love them. I loved his abilities. They were really cool. And
yeah, but then we created Genesis as a collaboration character.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help myself. I introduced her I basically made her the mother of the different world, basically. So she was the progenitor of the different ones. So like in the lore, thousands and millions or whatever years ago, she was the one who created the different world planet. And so I had to make sure she was in that archetype as well. And then we had the different machine god as well, who ended up being sort of a villain in that story, if I remember correctly.
Another character I loved that was Machine God. Yeah, it was really fun to play.
Yeah, so those were kind of the three different ways I went around designing. It was like meta stuff, collector stuff, and archetype stuff, and that was kind of where I was at. And then the last thing I'll say about the design elements, at least, was that I really wanted to try to go simpler but still powerful. And so I think what you'll see, at least starting, like I said, February 2021, and looking at the characters that were released till August 2022, is that before that you had characters, and this is definitely not a slight on any of the designers before me, because they were just trying to ramp up and make more and more interesting and desirable characters. But we saw a lot of characters, let's be honest, we saw a lot of characters with a lot of text on their abilities. So I always looked at Oni Eddie as an example of this, where he just had like 6 or 7 bullet points per ability. And that was always like overwhelming to me, right? It was overwhelming to me. And I of course, Oni Eddie, amazing character. People love him. I've seen people with tattoos of him. It's awesome. But yeah, I found it very overwhelming coming into the game. And so as I worked through those characters, my kind of philosophy was, let's try to make characters with only 2 to 4 bullet points per ability, but they like are impactful. Like they'll actually like they're strong. And so I would do stuff that would hopefully sort of simplify things for people reading them. Sometimes I would create passive abilities on characters that looked intimidating and looked quite text filled. For example, I think one of the first ones I did was Seventh Son Eddie's Awakening, where he would get the clock, right? That
was cool to play, yes.
Yeah, and so but the thing is, I thought personally, when you look at that ability, you only need to know a few key pieces of information, right? Like, every turn the clock's going to move. When the clock moves, an effect happens. Like, that's basically all it is. Yeah. But then you need a lot of text to explain what each clock thing happens. So that was kind of my design philosophy as I went through the game.
What were your favorite characters that you made?
That's a good question. I love that question because I do have a lot of characters that I like.
Same here.
I think my favorite, and I think I mentioned this like on the Discord, but I think my favorite Eddie of all time that I worked on specifically was Total Eclipse Eddie. Total Eclipse Eddie was such a cool character. He is just a badass looking character. And I remember I was able to work with the artists top to bottom, like designing the character from the base, because it wasn't a character that showed up in any promotional art. It wasn't a character that showed up it was a unique Eddie for the game. And I would love a piece of merch with Total Eclipse Eddie one day. That would be sick. But
I made a poem about him, but actually.
Oh really?
That's awesome. I posted it on Instagram. Yeah.
I love that inspired you. I remember coming up with the storyboard for his Fury, like before the character was even really like designed fully. And then I passed that on to the animation team, and they put it together as what you see in the game. With him rising into the air with like eclipse happening behind him, and it's just super cool.
It was just like an orgasm, I have to say. Like, it was so cool. It was so fucking cool, man.
An Eddie-gasm. With the
Eddie streams.
Well, Total Eclipse, the song too, is just was a song that we usually like to make an Eddie for every song. And it was a song that hadn't been done yet, and it was a song about sort of, humanity pushing the envelope too far, and, kind of being the hubris of man and you know, destroying the planet through climate change and greed. And you can see a lot of that kind of in Iron Maiden's music and lyrics. Even if you go to look at the newest stuff with Writing on the Wall, it's very much like prophetic doomsday sort of stuff. And so I wanted to create an Eddie that sort of, you know, was a vision of like, an embodiment of like, what if most Eddies were kind of positive in the sense where not all of them are positive, some of them are killers, but the idea behind Eddie was like, you know, exemplifying freedom and choice and you know, being able to choose your own path and walk your own way. And this was an Eddie, Total Eclipse Eddie was an Eddie that was, in my mind, sort of jaded. You know, was sort of like, well, all the other Eddies were like, yeah, humanity is the thing, like saw the positives in humanity. Total Eclipse Eddie was like, you guys fucking suck.
Yeah, fuck it. Like, I just throw a planet at you.
Yeah, like he had been twisted. And I won't go into too much of the narrative stuff behind that because you never know. Maybe they'll make another game and use some of the documentation. I doubt it, but maybe. But what I will say is Total Eclipse Eddie's like kind of journey was that of sort of vengeance in a sense, in some ways a way of like trying to, or maybe even just one of you know, he had a chip on his shoulder, and so he didn't work well with other Eddies. He's very antagonistic against other Eddies, and he's super cool, and he has a fucking awesome gun. So Eddie controls eclipses and stuff, I guess. But yeah, so he's probably one of my favorite. I really do like Stratego Eddie for similar reasons, because Stratego Eddie was a character that we designed as a team, and it was very much like based on the music video that just come out. Other characters that come to mind, I really did like Belshazzar. Belshazzar was cool, doing the, you know, wheelchair Belshazzar and then doing the awakening where he turns blue into blue man Belshazzar. That was a cool design thing. What else? Amaterasu was really cool. I liked Amaterasu a lot. Oh, you know what actually comes to mind? And the reason it comes to mind is because I have it's the one Eddie I have a figure of. It was Rainmaker Eddie. Rainmaker Eddie's awakening was, we started doing awakenings of older characters where I would go back and I would buff the character and then do the awakening for the character. And Rainmaker was a really fun one. I really enjoyed that design. I really enjoyed that. I just like Rainmaker Eddie. He's a cool looking character. Yep. Again, kind of one of those darker Eddies that isn't really a good guy per se, but he's cool. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his awakening passive was very much like he wanted to be the only Eddie on your team. He just wanted to bring one character, and it was the design of trying to be like, I don't think it worked, to be honest. If I remember correctly, it was just not powerful enough. You know, but the idea was how powerful do I need to make this guy so that he can solo a team by himself, right?
Like from my perspective, I really enjoyed this new approach of like, okay, how can we empower this Eddie? And the thought process of being, okay, how about we just making a lone wolf?
Yeah.
That was really fucking cool. The problem from my player perspective was that at the time there was like already no prayer for the dying, which would shut down his passive into the game. So it would just delete everything. And
no prayer for the dying, if I can just interrupt quickly, was another like kind of counter meta design. It was like, oh, let's create an Eddie that can shut down the gods specifically that we were creating, right? But yeah, sorry, continue.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You should included in the prayer of the dying. You should have said except Eddies, so that it would have been more playable.
Yeah. In hindsight, I agree.
No, yeah. I think I have, like, I tried to come up with a long list of what I loved about the awakening of Rainmaker and what I think could have been done to make sure that his playstyle would work, because I really Like I made like I think 4 videos about him in my channel. There's like 4 videos about
Oh.
him, just him only, and try to
That's
make it
awesome.
work with him alone and him with other characters.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that like the 3 major problems about the character was that it needed to go against 4 characters.
Yeah.
That it could not disable any of their passive, could not disable any of their talismans because he had like that was one of the major problem. And the other 2 were the reflect damage because that character was insane. I loved him. He was the highest damage character in the game.
Right.
His damage output was so high. I remember like dealing 4 million damage.
Wow, what the hell?
Yeah, 4 million damage. It was
crazy.
like I've never seen it.
Yeah.
But like even exalted effect that would reflect 300% damage. It was like, okay, I deal 4 million damage to you, and it deals back 12 million damage because it's reflected 3 times higher. And it was like,
Right.
yeah, that was one. And of course the revenge and counter effects. That whenever he attacked, it would just get blasted again. It was like,
Yeah.
to me, I think that addressing those 3 points would have made it better against,
Yeah.
especially the arena. But outside the arena, I can tell you that it could solo basically any god, any of the raid boss. It would just go
That's
there
cool.
and solo him. So it
That's
was
cool.
really fun. Yeah, it was really fun to play.
That's awesome. Yeah. I really liked Rainmaker. That was one that I enjoyed.
Mhm.
I also enjoyed Awakening. I believe it was Speed of Light Eddy, because that was one of the last ones I did. And I basically put in a bunch of little Easter eggs and binary code, and that was like a silly one I was able to do before I left.
I think without considering the Cybergeddon Eddy and the No Prayer for the Dying, basically shut down everything. I think I think Speed of Light was the strongest Eddy.
Really?
Yeah, because
Hey.
yeah, the simple reason for it was his Fury, Awakened
Oh,
Fury.
okay.
Because with the 3 pieces of broken data, you would just put a disc that basically granted negative effects, but they were seen as positive effects, so they couldn't be shut down. And that was the strongest part. And the one which I enjoyed a lot, when instant kill effects became a problem in the game, things like the Goat Talisman that would prevent them were introduced. And Speed of Light Fury would just ignore that. If you applied the one that would kill you, it's just you just die. There's no point to it, and you cannot even prevent it. That was really fun, and awesome. I think it worked as a countermeasure because it was strong, but at the same time it was not overpowered because of how other characters would interact with each other. That he's a reliable character, but not frustrating to play against because there were teams that you could play around with.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes the pieces come together, right?
Not gonna lie, if the only there was, I think it's the past ability, the basic ability that would remove the passive disable on all allies. I don't remember if it was the passive or the future, but it was not the present. Unlike it was for Edward the Great, which was basically my only counter to, okay, I am playing against Cybergeddon in Arena because there is only that. I play the Edward the Great, which enables my team to play against that character because it would reactivate all of my passives.
Right.
So
I'm glad that the design worked out in one way or another.
It really worked out. I love them, and one of the eddies which I had the most fun with because it was so like straightforward and at the same time so just have fun with it, and it really worked.
Nice.
It really worked.
Nice. Yeah. So I think those characters were near and dear to my heart. The Storm Riders also. The motorcycle characters, those were fun because it was like I was able to kind of create. If I'm not mistaken, we were like I started to do like fun, interesting little things with the release notes. So I'd put little Easter eggs in the release notes. I would like
Yeah,
put little
I remember.
put little notes and little things like that. And
Yeah, there was like a couple
yeah,
of days where you had like hints of what was going to happen, and
yeah, it
then
was
there was like
fun.
the yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. There's a few things I think I seeded that never got paid off. And so unfortunately may never get paid off. But yeah, if you go back and look at those those different release notes, there's a few things that hint at some of the bigger narrative ideas we were working on. But maybe even some Silent Planet related stuff. Who's to say? Who's to say? But yeah. Anyways, yeah, those are some of my favorite characters for sure. I'm sure, honestly. Oh, you know what? I'll throw one more in there. I love the Drifter. The Drifter was another fun character for me.
He saved my ass in a couple of games in the arena. I was like, what is he doing? Why is he winning? It was one before and still got the win out of it. I was like, sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I don't remember his kit exactly, but I just narratively he was an interesting guy, and I remember he wasn't supposed to be special really, but then I ended up making him matter a little more in the lore.
Yeah, and the
And,
Awakening was really cool.
Yeah, and yeah, and the Awakening and stuff. Yeah, I think I don't remember. He had a few cool names of his abilities were fun to name.
I don't remember the names, but I can tell you that was like the first ability would mark an enemy, and whenever he would get damaged, the Drifter would deal passive damage to him,
right,
and would apply the negative effects. And then there was the how's it called? The power ability that would passive disable the enemies and remove shields and block damage type effects like that. And then there's the passive, which was the one that saved my ass in that game, which I don't remember exactly, but it was like some sort of failsafe. If it was failing that below a certain HP pool.
Yeah, because he would stop himself from dying or something. I don't remember exactly, but
granting himself some vanish and stun and
well, so the whole thing with the Drifter that I can probably say is that and again, I say anything I say in regards to stuff that never got released or was never shown is taken with a grain of salt. It's just my thoughts on it. Was that he was important in that for some reason, one reason or another, he had this uncanny luck, basically, where he had a specific point in time he was gonna die. He's kind of like Doctor Who, I guess, in that sense. He had a specific point in time he was gonna die, and so nothing was gonna get him up until that point. So he kept meeting up with Eddie throughout time because he was just immortal like Eddie, right? But I think the one thing I wanted to do before I left, what I never ended up doing, was kind of seed the idea. There was a character I think called the Pilgrim or something, who was this younger guy with a hat and a guitar or something. And
the Pilgrim was I think the Pilgrim was the mage one with the book that got released in the Gauntlet.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I don't remember. There was a character. It might have been that guy, might have been another. But I wanted to seed the idea that it was the Drifter's son. So because they had a similar look to them. So yeah. Anyways, so yeah, those are my favorite characters. Sorry.
Since we are talking about the Drifter, his face, it looks a lot like Dave Grohl.
If it does
from Foo Fighters,
it's almost certainly unintentional.
Okay, because I was looking at it a couple of times, was like, it reminds me of somebody, but why is it Dave Grohl?
The artist may have taken inspiration. I'm not 100% sure, but
okay.
I don't know if it was a purposeful choice. Yeah. No, I'll say overall the game was a lot of fun to work on. Presented a lot of interesting challenges. Wasn't always easy, but like I said, we were a smaller team at the end, and it created a lot of camaraderie. In the team. Legacy's Alchemist, who some of you will know listening to this, who's been in many of the Discord channels and sort of is the point of contact, or was the point of contact for Legacy of the Beast. Me and them were very close during development, and it was amazing working with them, as they were the live ops designer and I was the content designer. And so it was us, it was the artists, it was a programmer or two that was helping us, and it was a tight team, and we were able to put out a lot of cool content, and that I think a lot of Legacy of the Beast and Iron Maiden fans liked and appreciated, and I hope they did. And it was a treat to be able to kind of touch on an IP that was so beloved for so many people for so many years, right? Like Iron Maiden is huge for some people. It's their identity for some people, and so to be able to have the opportunity to work on it, and not even work on it, but like do meaningful work on it, where like, you know, Senjutsu Eddie wasn't designed by us, but we were the first, you know, we implemented it into the game and created a lot of characters around it, and we were able to kind of usher in the Senjutsu album in the game. And I got to meet Bruce Dickinson and do an interview with him too. And
that's cool.
And then I got to see the band play live in Vancouver a couple years ago, year and a half ago, for the Senjutsu tour. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of cool memories, cool things. I hope they don't put down the idea of like Iron Maiden and Legacy of the Beast games. I hope they make a sequel. I hope they continue Eddie's story, and I hope I get to see Total Eclipse Eddie on a T-shirt one day, because that would be sick.
And we as players, we hope to see the Silent Planet one day.
one day, the meme that is Silent Planet. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you've already seen it before. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Who's to say?
I mean, about the T-shirt of Total Eclipse, I might like get somebody that knows how to make T-shirts, and
there you go, do some merch, custom merch.
There's
so many Legacy of the Beast characters that don't have official Iron Maiden merch that I think would be great. I'm sure everyone has a favorite that like isn't on merch that they'd love on merch, you know?
Like I would love to get, even if it was one of the last Eddies that came out, Apophis Eddie. I just love.
I'm not super familiar, but yeah.
I just love the Egyptian culture. To me, is something that really close to me, and just Apophis Eddie was so cool as a design.
Nice.
Basically, it would be the same as Mystic Eddie in the motions.
Yeah.
He had like an orb, and it was just centered around healing and cutting out bleeding effects and things like that.
Yeah.
It was really cool, and to mix up even with the others. But I would really love to have like something of him.
Yeah. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. No. Maybe one day. You know, I will say too, one of the things I did enjoy working on the project was all the collaborations we ended up doing as well. That was super cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Lacuna Coil, Power Wolf,
Ghost.
Yes, Ghost.
Five-Finger Death Punch.
Five-Finger Death Punch. That's right. Yeah. There's a bunch that didn't. Within Temptation.
Yep.
Yeah, and then there was a few that happened after I left, but that was super cool. I never really got to interact with the bands a lot, but it was always cool to see their reaction to the game stuff after it was made, and they were always super excited. And I still love Lacuna Coil. Like I listen to a few of their songs every now and then, and it always hypes me up. And Ghost too. Ghost has some good music as well. So it was just cool. It was cool to almost be. In some ways, I feel like the opportunity wasn't missed, but it certainly. I hope someday that it can be capitalized on more. This idea of sort of heavy metal extended universe, you know, like I was probably talking about the collabs in particular. That was being able to work on almost like the Super Smash Bros of heavy metal games was very cool and very unique. And I think if there was budget to make a more AA, AAA sort of style Legacy of the Beast game, I'd love to play that. I would play like a PlayStation 5 Legacy of the Beast like crossover game with a bunch of different heavy metal people, like
with a lot of collaborations.
Hell, that'd be sick. I think the RPG systems for Legacy Beast could be refined and made even better. So I really hope Navigator Games they're going through a tough spot, as is the rest of the gaming industry right now. And I really hope that they're able to pick it up and run with it and do something cool. So I think mobile was a cool platform for a lot of people to interact with the game on a, when they have time. But yeah, I think you and anybody watching this probably agrees that the IP and the concepts of the game and the music of the game deserves love and deserves to have its
that's for sure. Like,
and so
in most of the video games I play even today, there isn't that thing of playing with something and then put on the music you love. Like, for example, whenever I play Baldur's Gate right now, I've played it so many times that I remember most of the stuff. But even though I love all the music that there is into the game, sometimes I just put on some Iron Maiden, some black metal, anything that just goes below the game, but you can still hear it, and so you play with what you love, with the music you love, and it's just going back to Legacy. It's just like just put together the two things, and it was perfect.
So what I'm hearing is we need to see a Baldur's Gate 3 style RPG with Iron Maiden Legacy Beast characters.
I mean. Baldur's Gate is a huge thing, but
doesn't have to be that big, but that's style, that's style. So that would be sick. That'd be sick. Like that'd be sick. Top-down RPG with those characters. Yeah, I would love that. And the music, get some like orchestral renditions of all the Iron Maiden music. That would be sick. That would be sick.
Or even like giving credit to all the musicians that have made their covers in their own style. Like you've seen like the Bard edition that's like in the medieval Fear of the Dark. You have seen the Arp Twins doing the thing with the arps, and it's just like putting even those things together would just be amazing.
That would be pretty cool. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Is that we want some company out there, Navigator or otherwise. Let's get it moving. Let's get it moving.
Thank you for offering me some of your time.
Yeah, no, it was a delightful chat. I found the whole process very cathartic, just to talk about, because I left sort of, I didn't leave suddenly or anything, but just another job opportunity popped up at the time, and I ended up moving on. And it was hard to leave because I in some ways it was just like the community was amazing. It was the first time in my career making as game designer that I just felt plugged into the community, like, and that month to month. I'm not a huge mobile game guy. Like, I don't play a lot of mobile games at all, and I'm not a huge fan of like some of the designs and stuff. But what I will say, because I've worked at 2 mobile game studios now, is that month to month release schedule really gives you like that instant feedback from the community, and that instant like talking. And I love that. I loved everything that the LOTB community gave to us, the energy they gave to us, and the energy we gave back to them. And talking to you, it's been fun to kind of relive some of those moments and chat about it. It was such an honor to be able to not only work on the game, but sort of own the game in a sense, like have ownership of the game. Like I was really driving all the content for like most of the time I was there. And so like that was the first time to have that sort of like narrative control and design control. It was, and being trusted to be able to do that and seeing the reception of the community at the time was honestly a treat. So yeah, thank you. And thank you to those who are watching or listening to this for all the love that they've given the game over the last 8 years now.
Scared, I fell to my knees. Something rushed me from the trees, took me to an unholy place. That is where I fell from grace. And they summoned me over to join in with them to the dance of the dead. Into the circle of fire I followed them, into the middle I was led. up still. I was numb with fear, but still I wanted to go. And the blaze of the fire did no hurt upon me as I walked onto the coals. Then I felt I was in a trance and my spirit was lifted from me. And if only someone had the chance to witness what happened to me. And I danced, and I pranced, and I sang with them, all half dead in their eyes. Lifeless figures, they were undead, all of them. They had ascended from hell. As I danced from the dead, my free spirit was laughing and howling down at me. And all my eyes did pray, just dance the circle of death. Until the time came to reunite as both my spirit came back down to me. I didn't know if I was alive or dead, spirit, all done it with me. I looked to the sky, started to be attention away from me. When the took their gaze from me was the moment that I fled. I run like hell, that's without no window behind that did not glance. One thing that I did not do was to look just straight ahead. guess I'll never know just why they let me go. But I'll never go dancing no more till I dance with the dead.
The community for LOTB was actually really great. It was one of my favorite parts of working the job. I lurked a little bit in one of the bigger LOTB servers for a bit, and I was able to sort of just see people's reactions to releases, and it was always a very positive community, very uplifting. Of course, there'd be sometimes you'd have online drama, crap, stuff like that. But, you know, I think the servers in particular, the Discord servers in particular, did a good job of managing the community and respecting us as developers, interacting with them. And so, yeah, I give a big shout out to the LOTB community. It was, that was probably one of the best parts of my job, was actually just seeing the month-to-month reactions from people.